So let's talk about Tommy. Let's talk about good old Tommy. It's time for us to start asking ourselves, what do we think is in the works potentially for the characters that have survived the tragic, horrific events of the second game? What do we think about some of these characters potentially getting a huge twist? Kind of like we saw a little in the second game with some of the side characters, maybe even potentially turning our weapons towards some of these characters. And Tommy is very interesting because Tommy came in to the mix, obviously, of what happened with Joel, the confession at the top of the game that Joel makes to Tommy about, his terrorism at the hospital in the first game. We know that Tommy is now in the loop with what went down potentially, in the next game. Let's think about this, because Tommy can now be used. It's funny with Tommy's mental state, with how dark he is and how killer driven he is. We saw what he did to a part of Abby's crew. What was his name? Manny? I'll correct myself if I'm wrong, but if we saw what Tommy did, we know what Tommy's capable of. We know that Tommy, especially now, is angry because Ellie made the decision to break that promise to him about taking Abby down and making her pay for what she did to Joel. We know that all these feelings exist now. We know that there is room for Naughty Dog to play with us even more, to mentally just screw with us and maybe get into our heads and make us make a very, very tragic choice in having to see a dark character arc rise in Tommy. We don't know, however. We don't know if in the third game, if they are going to continue riding this wave out with the Abby versus Ellie dynamic. I personally believe that it's a little bit too predictable for them to keep that going for the whole game. I don't think Naughty Dog is that dumb. And if they do keep it going, it will definitely not be for the whole game. They will make some sort of twist and make us believe that Abby and Ellie are potentially still going after each other for certain times, but we do have that potential to see Tommy get thrown in that mix. There's a story there. There is definitely a story there for Tommy to be thrown into the mix in a dark character villain arc. Tommy now is vulnerable to that vengeance. He's in Ellie's position, and he's even more desperate now. So if they have to give Tommy some sort of twisted warp transformation physically, because obviously he's not the same Tommy. He's banged up, he's lost the eye, he got obliterated by Abby. We're looking at, okay, Naughty Dog could potentially write an interesting arc with him and make us further down in the line. Let's say they get even more bold and Abby and Ellie realize that their vengeance is not worth it anymore in the third game, or at least Ellie realizes her vengeance is not worth it anymore in the third game. She solidifies that by tag teaming with Abby. That pisses Tommy off. That pisses Tommy off to the point of betrayal. That pisses Tommy off to the point of making the most brutal transformation in Naughty Dog's history of family. We may have to make that decision to put Tommy on the hit list. If Tommy is gonna, go after Abby and Ellie somehow gets in the middle of that, what do we think about potentially having to kill Tommy off? I think that there's room there. I think that there's room for a story there, for there to be a dark arc in Tommy's development. What do you think they're going to do with this? I'm going to be throwing up a poll too on the channel. I want you guys to let me know where you think this is going for Tommy.